Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie, brought to you by the Ryan Martin Foundation. Go check Ryan Martin Foundation out on Instagram at Ryan_Martin_Foundation for all of their new and exciting activities that are coming up. Today we have our last episode of our series featuring Dromos Agency with David Kiley. David is a huge name in wheelchair basketball. He's a 9-time gold medalist, and he's the founder of DK3, the 3-on-3 wheelchair basketball tournament. Please welcome David Kiley. Dave, how are you doing today?
Hey, Aggie, I'm doing great. Better than I deserve.
Perfect. Well, I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to meet you. I feel like this has been a long time coming. I've been following you and DK3 for months now, and I'm so excited that we're here. But I guess first, just to kind of start out, could you tell me who you are and what you do?
Sure. I was born David Kiley, and I'm currently nicknamed DK. And I have made a career out of adaptive sports, primarily really focused in the basketball side of things, and played for the U.S. national team in 4 different decades. And a lot of joy, a lot of heartbreak along those lines. Currently, I'm retired player. Probably 7 years ago, I played well into my my early 60s. It's just crazy for me to say that out loud, but nonetheless, today I find myself in the arena of still being connected to wheelchair basketball and to the sports movement, adaptive sports movement. I didn't want to, I stopped coaching kids, and I wanted to stay connected. So I've been doing that through the Dromos agency, helping me with my brand, and then with DK3. I've been at that 18 years, and who knew? So, but it has come a very, very long way, and it is serving, I think, our population with something that they are really attracted to. So I'm glad to be where I'm at right now.
Absolutely. I was so impressed when I was reading through all of the different things you've done and how many people you've been able to reach through the DK3 and just so many other things that you've been working on. It's so cool. But kind of backtracking, can you tell me how you first found wheelchair basketball? What was kind of your first impression of the sport?
Well, I wasn't easily impressed in the beginning. I got hurt right out of high school, and I'd had a pretty good high school experience at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, and so I came into the new life of spinal cord injury with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about anything that had to do with wheelchair, anything. So yeah, when my therapist limped into my room, he had polio, and he was like 6'8" and had a giant beard, and his name was Ed Owen, and he's a Hall of Famer in the NWBA, and one of the greatest mentors of all time to many people, but particularly to me. So he tried to sell the whole act to me about wheelchair basketball, but I was still like, look, man, I was trying to go to Gonzaga and play, and able-bodied ball, and or San Jose State. I had some offers to carry on my able-bodied basketball career through education, but I got hurt right in kind of the interim, so to speak, and so I just wanted that guy out of my room when he, I didn't want to talk wheelchair basketball. But then, to make a long story short, there was a courtyard with a hoop, and I was I went into this little office lounge window area where I could see what he was doing with a basketball, and it was just jaw dropping. 360s, right and left hand scoops. Really, really talented. I could see talent really easily. So, but I didn't want him to see me watching or see me show any interest. But that's where it bloomed. That's where it was budded, from that initial engagement with Ed Owen, and more seeing him play than hearing him talk about me playing.
Absolutely. And at what point did you realize the sport was going to stick and this was going to be your thing?
Maybe after I made my first basket in a body jacket against the Los Angeles Stars, LA Stars back in the day. And I needed something because I was truly lost. And so I just immersed myself. Even before I left the hospital, I spent most of the time chasing the ball, and I was in a body jacket. I could hardly pick it up off the ground. And it was pretty comical, actually. But I knew right away that this would be something that I would want to take further, and when I found out I could, travel, compete, possibly make USA teams and go globally, then I was really all in. So I knew right away.
For sure. For sure. I want to talk about kind of the process of finding Team USA, selection, and things like that. Most of the people that listen to this show are young athletes, maybe middle school, high school age, and they're trying to decide if they want to go all in with their adaptive sports career. So can you kind of tell us about the first steps that it was like finding Team USA and how the process was for you?
Well, in my case, and this is an ego talking, but they found me. They were attracted to me. I was just playing. And back then in the 70s, you were there weren't really tryouts. You were just said, you're on the team, kind of deal. And so yeah, I got connected. I was in my first Paralympics. I got hurt at 19 and was competing in my first Paralympics at 21, I think. That was in Toronto, Canada. And at the time, that they weren't even called the Paralympics. It was called the Olympiad for the physically disabled. And but that's, in those years, the 60s and 70s is when the sport was really birthed internationally.
Absolutely. You read my mind with my follow-up question now. I guess, how have you seen the sport of wheelchair basketball grow in your time involved, and kind of supplementing that, the Paralympic movement as a whole?
Yeah, Aggie, I recently had a French film crew here at my house, Le Gros, that's doing and you're nodding your head, so I think you're somewhat familiar, but From the Shadows to the Limelight is the name of the film that they're going to produce. And I can't wait to see it, because I really believe that, in my early days in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, perhaps, or early 90s, that the sport was truly in the shadows. And equality, equity, as we talk about the Paralympic movement, there was none. You couldn't even get, unless you were some super inspirational story, you might get a 20-second clip on a news feed or something, so and as I see, today, we as players back then had to foot our own bill. It's like you had to raise money to play for your country. And you couldn't go unless you were able, because nobody else was going to fund you. And now today, we're talking about decades in between, but you know, more than even equality, we have equity, with equal pay for gold medals. And I have 9. I would have liked to got paid for some of those medals, but it's what it took to get to where we are now, and where the Paralympic ball player or athlete in general can come out and be very attractive in corporate America. And many of these players, as you well know, have landed seriously great corporate jobs, and so I'd say it's just a beautiful time for someone to be a Paralympic athlete, and to lay the ground for somebody new, young, to be inspired by that wheel print, or that path that particular female or male athlete took.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is an exciting time for me to enter this space too, because so many things are happening, like I don't just media coverage and ads and these deals that you're talking about now. So I'm learning as everything is moving full speed ahead. I think it's changing so much. But I want to talk about, I guess, now, watching Tokyo, what did you see specifically differences as far as coverage and involvement go?
Whoa, it's so dramatic. I guess I heard of a few complaints in the beginning because somebody didn't have cable or something to that nature, but yet, what was it, NBCSN that covered it? Like, I had never seen so much coverage, and I was all in on watching all sports, but I didn't miss 1 minute of the men's and women's basketball games. So, to me, it's the biggest paradigm shift yet, from what we were able to have piped into our homes, and realizing that the disability population is vast. It's like 1 in 3 Americans. I've heard said, if you don't have somebody living right next to you with a disability, then just look the other direction, and that person could be also someone with a disability. So it's a powerful network of people that have enjoyed the Paralympics, but even more than just, everyone enjoyed the Paralympics, so it lends itself to all those ads that we saw prior to, and now we continue to see ads with people with disability, mainly athletes, showing their gifts in marketing campaigns. So it's like, we both agree, it's just a fabulous time for our sport and the Paralympic movement.
For sure. Kind of following that up, I wanted to ask what advice you would give to young athletes who are adaptive athletes or some kind of wheelchair basketball player or something, and they're not sure if this is for them or if their eyes should be set on something like the Paralympics or to take their sport to high performance. What advice would you give them if they're kind of trying to decide?
Well, I think there's almost 2 questions there. It's for the young athlete that's unsure if sport is his or her thing, and then on the other hand, what would you do when you want to be better and move through perhaps the pipeline towards the Paralympics? So there's so many community-based programs for that entry level young athlete to get in and get exposed, and then because I don't necessarily think you have to have a sports background to fall in love with sport. I've seen it happen hundreds of times.
Yep.
So you just get in and learn from that whole community about how to be a better you. And if sport comes as a byproduct of that and moving forward, great. But you'll definitely be influenced in a positive way just in your activities of daily living, if that's all you want and need. And then for that pipeline, it usually means your chances are going to be better to be part of the Paralympic movement if you go to college. So my advice is to put your head down early in high school and be that student and get those grades that may not seem so important as a freshman and sophomore. And for coaches at the community-based level, have that expectation that, look, you have to cut it in the classroom or else you don't play in our program, no matter how good you are. And, as a junior coach, I've had to make those decisions where perhaps the best player had to sit out because of grades.
For sure. For sure. I guess I see you as your first love is basketball. And I want to ask you, I guess you kind of talked about how it's not always sport that brings you into something that you love so much. And maybe it is sport in the end, but it might not start as that. So how did you find that you were good at 3 sports over your time with basketball, track, and skiing? How did you make that or turn your love for basketball into these other sports as well?
Well, I knew, even before I got hurt, that I was blessed with some talent athletically. And if I could see somebody do it, no matter if it was unfamiliar to me, I could copy it. I was really good at, looking at somebody else and then taking it to my own level. It helped also that I was my career was adaptive sports, therapeutic recreation, and in the hospital settings. And so I'm teaching people the lifestyle of activity and recreation and leisure. And so I found myself like, my first time skiing was when I took patients to Lake Tahoe on a trip. And then I fell in love with it, and track, in the 80s, there was basketball and there was track, and that was about it. So, and having that early exposure from the basketball side, I was able to see track. And in that first Paralympic games, I went 5 for 5, one gold in basketball and 4 in track. And that's unheard of today. You don't find dual athletes, it's just not how they do it. But back then, that's how they selected you. If you had more value than just being a basketball player, they wanted you to be able to be multi-sport, and be more efficient with the numbers and the dollars. But that's way in the past. So
yes, touching on
but yeah, I'm sorry but skiing, I absolutely, that was just the highlight of moving from basketball to something totally different, and I was taught by some of the best, not only how to race in the gates, but how to ski as an expert off the beaten path, and so I loved it. There were years, Aggie, where I may ski 200, 250 days. One, because I loved it, but 2, I was also training. And really appreciated it. Track didn't stick with me as long. It was harder to work out for track. Your face down in the pavement. But yet I had success when I was into it.
For sure. I can tell that with you love the sport or these 3 sports, but it seems as though your passion is to spread it to other people. And I think that's amazing, first of all, to see all of the things that you've started and the people that you've been able to reach through adaptive athletics. But I want to ask specifically about DK3. I think after posting about Matt Scott and Courtney Ryan and a couple of people. We were sharing stories on our Instagram. Everybody's wondering how this started and how you began this tournament. So would you mind telling us a bit about the origins here?
Yeah, and I'll try to give you the cliff notes because it's kind of a long and winding road. But you know, my passion always about basketball since I could bounce one. But you know, and if you're a basketball junkie, then you know about street ball, you know about 3-on-3, and there's not too many people that love the game that did not or do not like to play in 3-on-3 kind of affairs, you know, events. And thus our tagline is soul of the game, because I feel like it's kind of it's true. But I had a friend from Turning Point, that's the charitable organization that umbrellas DK3, Shorty Powers. He was running in a adaptive sports extravaganza in Dallas, and it was the longest running of its kind. And he came to me he wanted a basketball event, and he was hard to say no to, and he kept hounding me about it. And I didn't really want to do it, but you know, he was a great friend and done a lot for me. And so I sat back, okay, how do I pull this off? Large numbers of teams are not going to fly into this for this event. But 3-on-3 might work, you know? And I'd run a couple 3-on-3 events in California. And so then I thought, even moving 3 people collectively is difficult for all 3 to get. And then I thought, you know, and what typically happens is 3 people get together and they may be 3 giants, and everybody knows who's going to win before they get there, you know? So how do I do that part of this? And so that's when we came up with the notion to enter as an individual. I will make the teams, or my local guy on the ground, in UTA's case, Doug Garner, and we'll create the draw in as much parity as possible. And so I was just doing 3-on-3 events, you know, I think we called them DK 3-on-3 or something. And then a conversation with Performax and Willie Hernandez. We're talking about the big 3, you know, the former pro athletes, pro basketballers, calling, you know, the big 3. And he goes, why don't you call it DK3? I go, well, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. And then Ishel came along with Dromos and, you know, took what I had been doing for, I don't know, 14, 15 years. And she branded it for me. You know, we mutually agreed on a marketing direction. And the best move I could have ever made was having her professionalize what I was doing through social media and branding, and moving me into podcasts and getting me on your show, and keeping me and DK3 out there. And you may not know anything about the history of old guys in our sport, but you know about DK3, no matter what your age is. And that's global, you know, people know. So I know we're doing something that people want. So that's kind of how it got started. And there was no short way of going about telling you that.
No, that's perfect. I've been wondering this for months now, and I'm sure everybody will be so excited to hear the story behind it, because it was so fun to watch from a distance. I know I was tuning into the Instagram lives from whoever was there at the time a few months ago, but it's amazing, and I love DK3. I'm a huge fan, but I just wanted to move into 2 last questions for you that I ask everybody who comes on the show. First, What have you learned about yourself through playing sport of wheelchair basketball?
Well, it's my greatest teacher. What I've learned from wheelchair ball is that you have to work. You have to work at it in order to receive from it, and then you have to give it away in order to keep it. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful that my DNA was stamped with giving back for a very, very long time. So I've learned, uh, one, that it's going to take hard work, and it won't deter me from going into uncharted territory. I love uncharted territory. I love to make a difference when people aren't necessarily thinking it can be done or expecting it could be done. So, it, and so much can come from basketball. If you talk to a Paralympian from Tokyo right now, a baller, and what it's done for them, it's exponentially like crazy. I met my wife through a Final Four championship. She happened to be the scorekeeper for one of the Nashville team that we were playing, and so I owe everything to that one moment to decide whether I could get past running, jumping, and playing ball into wheeling and pushing and playing basketball. And thank God I chose that direction, Aggie.
Absolutely. The people always say the power of sport. And I don't know if everybody understands what that means until you're in it. And I think that your story is like a really cool way of describing just the power of sport and how much it can bring and offer to you and everybody else involved in your story, which is so cool. But awesome. Let's see. Last question here. I end all of my shows on advice to your younger self. So what piece of advice would you offer younger Dave?
Okay. Yes, the toughest question last.
Yes.
Advice to my younger self would be to really seek the experience of others so that you could avoid some of the bad decisions. To not rely totally on your young self, to run ideas and decisions by trusted people, either in your family or coaches or mentors, because there's so much out there of great experience that could lend itself to you making it or not making it, and choosing drugs, not choosing drugs, alcohol, whatever it may be, so but then on the other hand, Aggie, I wouldn't be where I am right now without the mistakes I made, so there's some things I would like to change. We had a 98 game win streak, and we got bigger than ourselves, and we partied the night before with Joan Baez, a rock star, in Portland, Oregon, and we got beat in double overtime, didn't make the Final Four, and our record fell too shy of 100. That's a regret to and I coach myself up a lot differently to my younger self in that example, but otherwise I wouldn't do too much different.
I think that's great advice, and sorry to end on the hard question. I couldn't ask it to you at the beginning.
Yeah.
Completely changed the interview, but no, great advice. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and offering many words of wisdom to everybody listening. But thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Aggie. Thanks for what you do, and keep up with all your adventures.
DK, thank you so very much for coming on the show. It was an absolute honor to interview you and learn more about you and your passion for the sport of wheelchair basketball. Join us next week for another episode of Adventures with Aggie, where we're hopping back into winter sports with Ravi Drugan, a para-alpine skier for Team USA.